last year, 2020, was a year that forced change for us all. It's certainly a year like no other.
Sure.
Do you expect things to go back to the way they were when we come out of the other side? Are there some things about the way that you work now that you think will stay? How do you think that your role is going to change?
Yeah, I would like to hope there's many things that will stay. I guess, as you said, the biggest change initially was, 1 minute you're in the office, literally a week later you're all working from home. And that was a huge change, I think, for everybody pretty much around the world, I guess. And I suppose for us as a team, we very quickly got into the routine of, having the daily calls, the daily chat ups, and just making sure everyone's okay. And I guess what happened to start with, things just took so much longer because you're used to having a very visual conversation, touching things and feeling things, it's all on a screen. But you then find ways of making it work. And one of the things which you would think would probably be one of the hardest is working with a designer, which is very visual, is being able to work on a screen. I think the best investment I made was investing in a larger screen as well as my laptop, which is what I have in the office set up. But it means that you can blow things up in size. And what worked very well was going through the ranges, both of us on a call with the designer putting it on the screen and saying, oh, make that blue, make that pink or whatever. So it was a big change. But I think even though we're now back in the office, we're continuing to do that because it actually worked. I think the one thing as well we've all found, it's once you get used to it, a lot easier to focus on the job and get it done at home. Less chit chat around the coffee machine. And I think that's one of the big messages that I'm hearing, certainly from the team that I work in, is we want that flexibility of working from home. It's a work-life balance thing as well. Not everybody's happy with it, but in most cases we've made things work. A couple of the other things that initially were really hard to do was looking at fits and samples online. But, nowadays we've all pretty much got a camera on our phone and you can get some really good quality photographs. So I found, the last samples I see before going to production, traditionally they always came into the office. I'd fit them on a stand rather than a live model, then give comments back. I'm doing that pretty much all online now and think that it's something that we'll maintain. It's much quicker for the factory because literally as soon as it's ready, they can send me the photos. Again, it's one of those emails I tend to get overnight, first thing in the morning. I'll go through those. Any comments I might have, I don't know, a placket's not straight, buttons aren't straight, or any comments I want to make back, send an email back before I do any approvals. And the final thing, I guess, from a sustainability point of view, is I print a lot less now than what I ever did before. Probably being a bit sort of old-fashioned, I liked a piece of paper at the side, and particularly on my range boards, which I did go to Officeworks a couple of times and get it printed, but at $30 a pop was quite expensive. But having those two screens meant, you can flip between the two. And yeah, I think there's been many advantages. And I think in most cases in our business, we've found people have just got on with it and got the job done and done what they've had to do, which hopefully there's some good things that have come out of it, the work-life balance going forward.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so over the course of your career, as you mentioned in your introduction, you've bought menswear, kidswear and women's wear. Which is your favourite product category to work on and why is that?
Yeah, so I guess for me, I started in menswear, then moved to kids, then women's, and then went back to kids and onto women's. My ultimate favourite is probably women's. I like the fact it's very dynamic, it's fast moving. You tend to find from a trends point of view, women are the fastest mover in adopting new trends. Menswear traditionally the slowest. It's great to be able to work with a lot of print and colour. I remember very much my first roles in menswear where it was basically shades of blue, a bit of neutral, and a bit of green. And really, as a buyer there, and in that environment at Next, we were individual product buyers. You didn't really have to work with the rest of the team because it worked together. You move into a women's environment where print is so important. Then there's highlight colours. You all have to work together. Yeah. And it's always exciting to see, the new prints, the new colour, the new direction. But I guess one of the things I have realised with working on these different areas is the principles of buying are exactly the same. So, I guess early on, I've met a lot of people over my time who sort of say, oh God, I only want to do women's wear. Well, I would actually disagree with that. I think it's really good to get the experience in the different areas. and almost early on, good to not, as a woman, do women's wear, because you realize it's not about what you want. You know, I think that's so important. Sure, I've worked in businesses where I love things personally or I don't, but at the end of the day, it's who your customer is, and if it sells and it's what the customer wants, that's what you need to focus on. And I think if you go into like a women's wear business or a women's wear role as a woman and think, oh, you know, I've got great taste, right? You know, I love clothes, it's all about me. That's, you know, completely the wrong way to think. So yeah, I guess it's realizing that you can change. Once you've got the skill set, you can move the skill set. And I think one of the biggest lessons for me was when I was at Next, and I went into a new role there 2 weeks before a big range presentation, and I'd always worked on woven fabric types, never on knits. And I started 2 weeks before this big presentation, and I was like, okay, I don't know anything about a knitted fabric, but the people around me do. Yeah. So they are the experts in what they do. Don't go in and pretend you know it all, because I clearly didn't, but I knew the principles of putting a range together, working with the customer, how to negotiate my prices, how to work with my planner. So yeah, I'd say I do love women's wear, but I certainly wouldn't not look at an opportunity to go back to men's or kids.
Okay, great. And what do you think makes a great buyer?
I guess for me, it's you've got to be commercial. It's understanding your customers. So as I just mentioned, you know, it's all very well thinking that because I love everything, I want everything black, so does your customer. Well, most cases, absolutely, they don't. So it's really important in whatever business that you're in that you understand who that customer is, what the parameters are, how much money she or he has got to spend. You know, what level of quality that they expect and things like that. And as we touched on earlier, the financials have become more and more important. So you need to have a good understanding of basic sort of retail maths. And as a buyer, you know, again, in most businesses, you'd have a planner as support, but you need to work together and you need to understand the whole things. And I think that's really important. But I guess for me, one of the things that I think is really important as the buyer is, and I use the environment I work in now, so I'm very lucky I have a designer and a planner, and the designer is almost the person who's running to the trend. You know, she's looking at the catwalk, she's always wanting the new stuff. The planner, on the other hand, is, you know, he's looking at his history and he's going, well, you know, that sold last year, we need to have the same thing. Now, we all know that if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same results. So I sort of see the buyer as that person in the middle who works with the designer and the planner, and kind of is the one who sort of goes, okay, so yes, we do need some of that history, absolutely, but we could move it on to do this. And yeah, absolutely, I see that trend is the trend. If we don't have that, we're going to look like, you know, we're 12 months old with a product. So I think, yeah, it's really sort of that financial acumen and the customer, and realizing that you are that sort of glue that brings that relationship together, and that you are a team. You know, you can't do it on your own. You have to, and as I always find, you know, you as the team, you can have arguments outside of meetings. If you go into a presentation meeting, you really need to be on the same page. It doesn't look good if you go in there as a team and you're all fighting. And sure, we don't all agree all the time, and you wouldn't expect us to. But you want to get to that point where you're at a point with the strategy that you're presenting to the senior leadership team.
Great. Okay. So my last question for you, Nicola, is what would be your top 3 tips for someone wishing to embark on a career in fashion buying today?
Okay, so I guess it's really about, first of all, is making sure that you've got that basic understanding in maths, and not dismissing it as something I don't need in my life. You know, it's really important to have that. And I guess the other one is really focusing around the customer. As you know, it's a difficult career to get into, and opportunities are not always there when you want them. So I guess my advice in that situation is really go and look at how else can you broaden the skills that you can then bring to a role, even if you come in as a junior role. And that really, to me, is getting out into retail and getting a job within a retail environment. That way you're, you know, as well as sort of been able to see the product coming through, and, you know, getting involved in a merchandising thing, seeing how things are arranged when they actually hit the floor, you're actually seeing the customer firsthand. You know, you're listening to what they say, and it's quite interesting when you listen to them, and half, you know, they don't even think how I would think, but if you don't try and get into their mindset, you're never going to be a good buyer. And I think the other thing from my experience of having that type of experience, many big companies will offer the opportunity to people who have worked within their retail environment, the opportunity to get into buying as buyer's assistant. And I mean, my assistant is somebody who did that. She worked for Target. She got herself up to assistant store manager in one of the Tasmanian stores, had the opportunity to move over to Melbourne to work in the support office as a buyer's assistant. And she's just recently been promoted to go onto the trainee buyer program. So, you know, and although she came into the role without any buying experience, the experience she can bring to me and the rest of the team about her experience of, you know, when we send a communication out to store and she'll say, oh, when you send XYZ out, God, that used to frustrate us because, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I need to think about how I do that differently. And, you know, for instance, today we're working on a visual merchandising plan for next summer, and she really knows how the fixtures work. So I want to put that dress there, and she's like, you can't, Nicola, because the fixture's too short. So you know, it's just because she's not the buyer at this stage, she's still got so much to add because she's got that background experience that she can bring into the role, and she was given the opportunity. And I'm pretty sure when she came into the support office, that wasn't a role that was advertised externally. It was an internal thing. So I guess it's really, you know, maybe look around the role as to what other things you can get experience in, rather than being disappointed that you can't get a straight job into sort of a support office.
That's great. Well, that's really terrific advice, and some fantastic insights really into the role of a buyer, what your day looks like, and how things have changed over the years. So, Nicola, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.